So today I want to talk about pro-mortalism. This is the view that it is better to die than to continue living. And notice there's a difference between pro-mortalism and antinatalism. The latter says only that it is better never to have come into existence, the former that it is better to no longer exist. But nevertheless, pro-mortalists and antinatalists are similar in at least one respect, namely both generally accept some form of pessimism about existence. In other words, they accept that existence is on balance very bad. So for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to assume that pessimism is correct, and I think there are plenty of reasons to think that it is correct. Well, if we accept this sort of pessimism, naturally the question then arises, are lives which contain more bad than good, and are expected to continue to contain more bad than good, are such lives worth continuing? So one reason that's sometimes given for why such a life might be worth continuing is that most of us, have a strong desire to continue existing. We have an inborn drive, if you like, to prolong our existence. But it seems to me that while this is a reason why many people continue to exist, it's not a reason for continuing to exist, because the fact that we have some desire does not mean we should not want to nevertheless overcome this desire. That is, if something is known to be productive of more bad than good, a desire to continue such a thing is a desire that would be better to overcome. So I don't think the mere desire to continue living is a reason for continuing to exist, any more than the desire to continue anything that is ultimately harmful to us can be given as a reason for continuing such things, though it may explain why we often fail to overcome them. Now, another argument against pro-mortalism is that although suffering obviously is an evil, death is also bad. But I don't think this sort of argument about death actually poses a threat to pro-mortalism, because if death is a harm, we can only postpone death, though we can't avoid it. In other words, we will need to face death whether or not we live the rest of the life we have. And so if life is bad, it is better to end it, it seems to me, sooner rather than later. In this way, we at least avoid the bad that is avoidable. But while I do consider myself a pro-mortalist, I also think recognizing that your life is not worth living does not immediately imply that you should end your life. And this is because although your life may intrinsically be, that is considered independently and as such not worth living, not worth continuing, our death may be bad for others. And this can be a reason, a very important reason in many cases, to continue a life that is in itself not worth continuing. Of course, many people will likely want to object to this and say, if pro-mortalism is correct, why not just kill those individuals about whom we're concerned? Wouldn't this, after all, be good for them too? And what if killing these individuals will not negatively affect anyone else? Then wouldn't we have some sort of moral obligation to do so? Well, I think there's a response to this, which is that killing, assuming that the individual has not offered their consent in any way, involves imposing death on someone. And I think whenever we impose decisions like this on another, especially one as final and irreversible as death, we want to be absolutely certain that it is the right decision. Right? That is to say, although I'm fairly confident that pro-mortalism is correct, and would certainly be willing to act on it myself were it not for the reason I mentioned before, there's a sense in which I need to be far more confident when imposing this on another. So to make this point a little more clear, suppose an optimist develops a chemical formula, or whatever you like, that they could simply add to people's water supply to make anyone who drinks this water immortal. In other words, make it impossible for them to die or to end their lives. Now, even if you are a thoroughgoing optimist and you believe all lives are worth living, and you consequently believe that suicide is always a mistake, you might still think it would not be acceptable for you to compel others to continue living in this way. You need more certainty if you're going to impose a decision like this on others. And I think a pessimist can think that imposing death is similarly problematic, at least in those cases where the individual can make these sorts of decisions for themselves. So that is all for now, and thanks again for listening.